Welcome to the Safe Zone. This is where we're going to take a time to explore the ins and outs of mental health, well-being, and everything in between. I'm your host, Living, and today we'll be diving into a topic that has the potential to transform your life, and that's called unlocking the power of mental freedom. You see, mental freedom is more than just a buzzword. It's like a key to living life, where your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are just completely aligned with your true self, rather that being dictated by external pressures, fears, or just past traumas, but how do we achieve this exclusive state of being? That's what we'll be exploring today in today's episode. And so you'll get a chance to actually see what it means to unlock the power of mental freedom. Okay, so I hope this episode brings you a lot of insight, strategies, personal reflections, and interactive segments to keep you engaged, but also help you ultimately maintain that mental freedom. All right, y'all, so we're going to get started by talking about what mental freedom actually is. And I believe that once we start with the basics, right, and just get a feel for where the basics begin when it comes to that topic, you'll have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. All right, so what exactly is mental freedom, right? But at its core, when we start looking into it, it's really just the ability to maintain a sense of peace, autonomy, and clarity, regardless of what's happening around you. That's mental freedom. It's the ability to say, you know what, I can see a lot of stuff going on around me, but mentally, I'm okay. I'm at peace, right? It's a state of being in clarity regardless, where you are in control of your mind rather than being controlled by your mind, if that makes sense, right? So if you can imagine a life where your decisions aren't being influenced by fear, or just where your self-worth isn't tied into external validation, and you can kind of navigate those challenges without losing your sense of self. So when it comes into play about mental freedom, it's not about being perfect. It's just about breaking free from limiting beliefs. Sometimes we start to dabble over into forms of self-doubt in our mind, and the need for approval, and just ultimately not stepping into our true power. So to avoid that, you have to understand what the basic is. Like the basics of mental freedom, that's really just understanding who you are, how much you mean to yourself as far as self-worth, and that you shouldn't be influenced by your fears, any strongholds, any addictions, or any of that, and that you have the power to navigate within those challenges without losing yourself, right? We come into situations all the time where we're challenged by our environment, people around us, our jobs, etc., our kids. But if we lose a sense of peace within ourselves, your mind isn't really free, because you'll always be looking for, approval of others to be at peace, or you'll always be limiting yourself because you have a certain mindset. So you got to be more open. When it comes to self-doubt, you got to tell yourself stuff like affirmations, like I am beautiful, I am loved, I am handsome, I am amazing. Those things help bring your mental back into a space of peace and clarity. And so in today's first segment, we are discussing what mental freedom is. Mental freedom doesn't mean to ignore reality either, or pretend that everything is perfect. That's in a form of just a piece of insanity. And you can't go about life like that, just trying to always be perfect and not realize that you're going to make mistakes, that things are going to happen, and that nobody is perfect, right? So it's all about acknowledging the truth of your circumstances while choosing how you want to respond. You know, your reaction says a whole lot about you when you come into a situation. It's your reaction that matters, right? It's the power that you have within yourself to create your own experience, regardless of external conditions. You have the power to overcome anything. You have the power to protect your peace. You have to remember that when it comes to certain situations that try to take you out of your peace, right? And so it's important to develop fundamental core values in your life so that you can have a well-developed trait of characteristics to go by, right? Remember, you are in control of your mind. You know, don't let your mind control you. So if your mind is feeling a little bit sad that day, don't let that control the rest of your day. Just figure out what's the root cause of the sadness, overcome it, and then start to adapt to that process of overcoming that sadness throughout the day, right? Sometimes you may have a bad day, but that doesn't mean you have a bad life, if that makes sense. So once you understand the basics of what it means to be exactly free mentally, at its core, again, I do believe that it's the ability to maintain a sense of peace and clarity regardless of what's happening around you. I know in my personal life, whenever I'm presented with a task or a challenge, I often find myself at one point I would get a lot of anxiety, because of what was happening around me. I would get a lot of fear just because I couldn't see the outcome of the situation. And then I had to take a step back and say, you know what? What's for me is for me. All my job is to do is just live my life, right? And so if I continue to operate on just faith, the just shall live, right? And I'll be in a sense of just understanding who I am as a person and develop my faith even more, because I'm not focused on what's going on around me. I'm really just seeking that sense of peace, and I'm maintaining that. And by doing that, my mind can be free from distractions. It can be free from fears. It can be free from, desires that are only going to bring me chaos and pandemonium, getting off track with things and etc. So mental freedom doesn't mean ignoring reality, or pretending that everything is perfect. It's just you have to get to a point where you acknowledge your truth of your circumstance and you choose how you respond to it. Like if somebody come to you and they're angry and upset and they start using words of profanity, you in that moment, you get to choose how you respond to that person. And mentally, if you're already at peace and they come in with a lot of anger, you can't fight fire with fire. It's just going to grow even more. Somebody has to be the peacemaker in a situation. Even in relationships, like if your spouse or your significant other is coming in and they have an emotion attached, or they're just having a rough day, you don't combat that spirit. You don't combat that emotion with the same type of response that they're giving. You have to go above and be at peace. You know what I mean? And you have to bring that to the table. You have to have the patience to do that if you're in a relationship. And then in return, you can inspire them to know how to handle you when you're not at your best. When you break free from limiting beliefs, like the saying that, oh, I can't do this, oh, I'm not ready for that, I'm not equipped for that. No, you break free from that, and you start to develop more confidence and more assurance that you can do anything you put your mind to. You know what I mean? That's overcoming self-doubt, and I think self-doubt is overcome by just practicing self-love. So you're replacing the word doubt with love. So you're incorporating more positive over the negatives in your life, right? So again, it's about acknowledging the truth of your circumstances while choosing how ultimately you want to respond to the power of creating your own experience, regardless of external conditions, regardless if you don't have the best car right now, right? Regardless if you don't have the biggest house on the block right now, you always wanted a big house. Regardless if you don't have your business up and running like how you want it to be, or your finances are not looking like they should be in your bank account. Regardless of that, you still have mental freedom. You still have that confidence. You still have that faith. And everybody knows faith is the essence of things unseen, unheard of. And the just shall live by faith. So if you want justice and you want mental peace, you got to still keep living. You got to still keep going. No matter what you see around you. I don't care if people around you are just straight up bad people. Keep going. And eventually you'll get around people who are not as bad as them, right? But don't give up on your life because of what you see around you. Change it, right? Start being around people who are more positive. Start developing more spiritual connections with people who are headed in the right direction as yourself, right? Start to incorporate more activities into your daily routine where you're just adding to yourself, whether that be knowledge, understanding, or wisdom. You're just really adding to yourself, right? You're adding to your mental. You're developing self-worth. You're overcoming fears. And in return, y'all, that, believe it or not, will generate into mental freedom, and you'll become a master of that. You'll unlock the power of having that, right? And so when you understand the basics of mental freedom, at its core, it's the ability to maintain a sense of peace, regardless of what's happening around you. So now that we've defined what mental freedom is, let's start talking about like what strands or like what stands in the way of achieving that, right? So when it comes to mental freedom, there are several common barriers to mental freedom, and understanding these can help us identify where we might be getting stuck. You know what I mean? So one major barrier is fear. That's just like number one. And it's a major fear thing like people have when it comes to being mentally free. People are really in fear. That's like the root cause of a lot of things in our lives. And sometimes we don't recognize it because it then branched off into anger, which branched off into rage, insanity, and then, ultimately an action has been performed whether you've committed a crime or gotten punished with severe consequences because of you not having mental freedom when it came to that fear. And that can be fear of failure. A lot of us deal with the fear of failure. Sometimes we have placed upon ourselves unexpected expectations that are just, I think, in my opinion, just too much, too soon. And it could be stemming from, the aspect of wanting to impress people. And I can speak to that because I used to live my life that way. I used to have a fear of failing because of the atmosphere I grew up in. There wasn't a lot of people who were successful in my neighborhood, and I always told myself when I got older, I never wanted to be a person that didn't be successful, and not to judge those people. It's just, I knew that wasn't where I wanted my life to go. So the fear can stem from a number of sources. Like sometimes it might emerge in response to a specific situation. In other cases, it might be related to some type of mental emotion, whether it's you dealing with anxiety or some form of sadness that has led to depression. But the fear of failure is also, like I said earlier, related to trying to be a perfectionist. Like you will have such high expectations for how you expect things to turn out, and if you experience anything opposite of that, that fear will cause you to develop anxiety or depression. And it's not healthy to have that type of expectation in life because nobody is perfect. So just to kind of touch on some of the characteristics of fear, a lot of people go through certain symptoms in their behaviors where they develop powerlessness. Like you may feel like you just like, oh well, you know what I mean? Or you may develop helplessness, whereas like you just feel like nobody can help you. And there's always help out there. There's always people you can talk to. You may start to feel like you've lost control over your life because you don't have direction. And in that moment, that's when you need to pray even more. You know, ask the Most High to give you a sense of direction. Some people go through forms of avoidance where they just avoid people, they avoid going out, they avoid eating, they avoid doing stuff that's normal for them to do. And then those are just, you know, some common signs you might see of somebody who has a fear of failure. You know, people who deal with that, they often sometimes believe that if they don't have the skills or knowledge to achieve something, they'll fail. They'll have feelings like they won't be able to achieve goals. They'll start telling people that they'll probably fail, so their expectations may remain low. You know, just negative talk. And it's just that fear of failure. That's the root cause, really. And it's believe it or not, a mental disorder. Especially if it turns into moments where you have excessive and unreasonable thoughts of failing. You know, if you had a critical upbringing, like if you grew up in a household where there was no support really, it was always chaos, you know, the atmosphere was loud, you know, you're most likely at risk to experience a fear of failure because you felt that you could never live up to your family's expectations during childhood. And then those things develop over into making mistakes as an adult, right? Like people have different definitions of what failure means, but for some people it just means not achieving something exactly as they planned. So you can't be a perfectionist in life. Like God didn't make us that way. You know what I mean? To be perfectionists, because there is room for a mistake, and mistakes help you learn. They help you grow. They help you develop. You know, it doesn't mean that you're nothing or nobody or you're a failure. It just means that you have to try again. You know, and that's okay. You're not always going to get it right the first time. Maybe not even the second time, but you still have an opportunity to get it right because you're still breathing, you're still alive, and you're still here. A lot of people don't understand that anxiety can be generated in genetics. Like, for example, certain generational behaviors, right? And just how people live their lives. Like, for example, if you grow up around people and there's alcohol involved or drugs or just lying, stealing, cheating, crime, genetically you're going to develop those behaviors. It's going to pretty much be in your system because you're around that. And also sometimes those genetics can get into our DNA, and then when we have kids, that's in them. You know, that spirit is attached at that moment. And so you have to cleanse yourself of that fear or failure, because again, you're not a perfectionist. So those high standards that you have, cast them down. Cast them all the way down so that you can give yourself grace. You know, even people who have experienced difficult traumatic experiences, they find themselves having panic attacks because they're just contributing to the feeling of fear, right? And there's no such thing as perfection. So if you feel like you're about to lose a job, or that you're not going to get into college, or you're about to lose something around you, that fear can come upon you and generate into trauma, which can cause a panic attack. So just be mindful of what you're thinking about, how you're doing things in life, and just try to understand that you're not a perfectionist. Nobody is, and that it's okay to not get it right the first time, right? So fear is a major barrier when it comes to people not being able to be free mentally. It's a major barrier. It can actually keep you trapped in a cycle each season. I noticed one time in my life where it was like every October something would just happen, and it'd be like every year, and I had to really tap into myself and like tell myself like, hey, what is going on? Like every October something's happening. It's like a cycle, right? And once I stopped that cycle from happening, ultimately I grew from that. I learned from it. It was like, all right, enough is enough. Every year this is not gonna happen. I'm not gonna be in the same situation I was in last year, right? And so I changed my belief system around how I viewed fear. So like these stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of, those are often beliefs actually inherited from our upbringing. Like if nobody around you is a doctor or a lawyer or somebody successful, then you're not going to really hear about positive conversations, especially if they're always talking about negative stuff. So you have to get around different people who are bringing you that more positive type of conversations, who want to advance in life, right? Oftentimes beliefs are inherited from culture, just, the community. Like, yeah, we all have different ideas. We all have different culturalistic traits that we bring to the community, but that doesn't mean you have to limit yourself because of that certain culture or even past experiences. You know what I mean? I remember for a while in my life, oftentimes I would be in fear because of past experiences, especially when it came to men. When it came to certain men or just men in general, I would kind of shield myself and put up tons of walls, even in relationships with them, because of my past experiences growing up. And ultimately, I wasn't able to be at peace or really get to know the person or even see them for who they were, because I was always thinking like, okay, I know at some point they're gonna hurt me, so let me just keep my guard up. And it wasn't love being generated from me. It was actually my fears, being generated. And so a lot of my relationships did not work out because I had brought that past experience and that past traumatic, cycle that I experienced in those previous relationships into that newer relationships. So, one major barrier is fear, and you have to get over that. You have to change your belief about it, right? And from doing that, it can be incredibly difficult to shake, right? But you have to try. You got to keep doing it, and it's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take practice. It's going to take a lot of faith, and it's not going to happen overnight. Nothing will happen overnight that you have to work hard at, because in the end, it's going to be worth it, because you're going to be a master over the situation. You're going to be very mindful of it, and you're going to know better. You know what I mean? So then there's external validation, that a lot of us fail to realize, that we've been conditioned to seek approval from others. Whether that be from parents, your peers, or just society at large. Oftentimes we find ourselves being conditioned to seek approval from others. It's that need for like validation, that can lead us to make choices that are not aligned with our true selves. Let me say that again. The need for validation can lead us to make choices that are not aligned with our true selves. For example, I remember growing up, everybody around me played sports. Everybody. And even my parents played sports. And so it wasn't an expectation, so to speak. However, it was a way for me to express myself and get popularity, because I felt like I was just a nerd and nobody paid attention to me. So I grew angry. And I grew angry because at home I felt the same way. And so to express myself, I started to open up and tackle those thoughts and stuff in the sports. I transformed those thoughts into actions on the court, whether it was in the baseball field or softball field or wherever I was playing a sport. And then I noticed I started to have a need for validation because I wanted to impress my parents when they came. I wanted to make a bunch of shots, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to get a lot of points. I wanted to be a champion on the court. And, it led me to not be truly aligned with myself, I remember one time when basketball was a passion of mine, and then it led to something that felt like it was a forceful thing. It wasn't no passion, no fun in it. And I had realized I took the fun out of the game because I always wanted to have this need of trying to impress everybody. And, ultimately I was stifling my mental freedom. So I stopped paying for a while, because I felt like, man, I'm not going to get into the WNBA. I'm just probably going to end up like a statistic, just here, not doing nothing with my career or my future. And I got really sad and depressed. And so at the time, I remember trying to apply for college, and I wanted to go into college with a scholarship from basketball. But I had to realize what type of neighborhood I was in. There weren't a lot of scouts coming out to see us play. There wasn't a lot of resources at the time for kids to even make it that far. And if you had to, do those things, if you had to have those resources, you had to have somebody in your family go out and get those connections for you. And so with that in mind, not having the resources to have that at our school where we were giving opportunities to, transform our athletic careers in the midst of going to college over to something professional, it kind of made me feel some type of way. And so I just had to reshape my mindset around what my career would be going into college. So I remember applying for financial aid assistance, and I remember taking the ACT, SAT, testing to qualify for college in general. And so, of course, there was a lot of, challenges and obstacles to get those things done, but I was really determined, to make it, so to speak, to college. I knew that would help me a whole lot. It would keep me out of trouble, and it would be something that my parents could be proud of, just getting to college and being one of the first ones in our generation and within our family to go to college and ultimately graduate, right? And so that leads me to the next segment, which is talking about the barriers of emotional baggage. Unresolved traumas and grudges and past hurts can weigh us down and prevent us from moving forward. They can keep us stuck in the past and unable to fully embrace the present and future. There were certain situations when I went to college that I found that were challenging for me because of the emotional baggage I brought. For example, I had a lot of unresolved trauma. And some of you know my story, some of you don't, but I had a lot of unresolved traumas, and certain situations that came into play in college triggered a lot of those traumas. And at first I didn't know how to deal with it. It was just like I got frozen in a sense, or I just went into a shell. I went behind closed doors and cried about it. And it was like trying to get myself together to come out and put on this happy face for my friends, and just ultimately having that in place. And it was tough at first, and it was something I did not want to talk about and share amongst them, because you never know who's around you. I'm really big on not putting my business out there for the entire world to hear, especially people who may be around you in the form of, that's all they want to do is gossip and tell people business. Yeah, you're not finna. You know what I'm saying? So I was really protective of myself and my emotions, etc. When it came to grudges, I realized I had a lot of grudges against certain people. Unexpected grudges, just times of not being, have forgiven that person, if that makes sense. There was a time where somebody in my past did something to me, and I realized I had a grudge against them where I didn't forgive them, and it was weighing me down from moving forward. There was a time in my life where I remember being upset at my parents for divorcing when I was young, because I felt like our whole house just was split in half, and it was just traumatic, But as I grew older, I had to understand that they weren't perfect, and I needed to take my expectations off of them of trying to make them look like the perfect parents. I also had to understand that they grew apart, that they weren't getting along, and that it was for the best for them to separate. It didn't mean they didn't love me any less. It just meant that in separate households, they would generate a more healthier form of love to me because they have that space between them. It didn't mean that they were not good parents. It just meant that they made a decision amongst themselves to separate and love me from two different atmospheres. And so as an adult who's also going through a divorce, I can attest to that. I can relate to that now because my kids have two different households that they travel back and forth to. And, me and my ex-husband, we teach them to understand that we love them regardless, that we are having a healthy co-parenting experience, and that we can communicate effectively, and that we want the best for them. And so by that being in place, I'm able to not let that hurt from my past relationship or my past marriage weigh me down and prevent me from moving forward. Because my next relationship, I don't want to get into a situation where I'm still focused on the past. I may learn from my past and bring up some experiences I've had to that person to kind of get them to understand where I'm at. But I will be able to move forward, And I think a lot of us women, we sometimes find ourselves stuck in this cycle of, depression throughout the years and the seasons because we're thinking about past relationships, past experiences, past, situations. For example, I remember a time where for a certain holiday, my family would always gather amongst each other. And I'm talking about my mom's side of the family. And it would be a big holiday experience. And when I got kids and I had my own family, my family wanted to be amongst themselves sometimes. And I had to develop a freedom mindset where I said, okay, this year I won't be able to see them. However, I'll be with my immediate family. I can FaceTime in the meantime, write text messages, send pictures, or even just go visit the day after the holiday, But it was just all about finding that balance and not being stuck in the past and, holding grudges or just not embracing my present and my future. Because I wanted to create new experiences and new memories with my current family and my current, my kids. And so at one point I used to feel like, oh no, like I won't get to see them this year. They may be upset at me and this, that, and the third. And that was just something my mom was telling me. They didn't love me any less because they couldn't see me. My parents loved to see their grandkids, but some seasons, some holidays, I just wasn't able to make it, and I had to set that boundary in place to create balance within my own personal family. And so when you start to identify that there are barriers of emotional baggage when it comes to unresolved trauma or just grudges, you'll understand how it could have kept you stuck and you not even realize it. I remember a season in my life where it was like, I think maybe 4 or 5 years of just me trying to figure out what my purpose was. I was in between, having birth from my first son, and they're all 2 years apart, my kids, but it was like in between those births, I would get into a season where I had no idea what my purpose was. It's like I was searching so hard for it. I was like, God, what am I supposed to do? Like, what am I here to do? I don't want to just be a mom. I don't want to just be a wife. I don't want to just cook. I don't want to just clean all day. I don't. Like, this is draining. This feels like slavery. And I hate it. And so I had to really sit down and take a look at my life, take a look at what I've been through, and ask God to show me how to overcome it and try to find my purpose, And so I took 5 years off maybe 6, where I just did just that, because I was getting worn out. Like I was like, God, there's no way. And I love my family. I love my kids. I love my kids. I love being a mom. I love, keeping the house clean and things of that sort. But it just felt like that was weighing me down. And I said, God, there's no way you created me just to wash clothes, just to cook and, do these things around the house. So what is it that I can do that can help me fully embrace my present and ultimately generate a more healthier, wealthier future? And so I began to ask those questions, and day by day, I began to receive answers and confirmation and more guidance, So it was all spiritual. So now we're going to go over to the next part where we talk about steps to unlock your mental freedom. So now that we've identified some of the barriers to mental freedom, and I've kind of gave y'all just a little backstory of, what I experienced in, terms of, what I had to offer. The journey to mental freedom is personal, right? It's very personal, especially for me, because I've witnessed people around me growing up who had mental handicaps, I guess you could say, or mental challenges that just kind of almost took them out, and I've seen some people actually not come back from that. So that journey, I always told myself the journey to mental freedom was personal. But there are like a lot of steps I would have to take to get there. And along the way, I really learned myself. I learned my limitations. I learned how strong I was. I learned how weak I was in certain areas. And it just helped me grow overall. So the first thing I learned about was self-awareness, right? I realized that you can't control what you're not aware of. And so when you start by observing your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors without judgment, you give yourself grace. Like, you start to forgive yourself for not knowing, you know what I mean? And you start to thank yourself that it's now brought to your attention, so you're not naive about it anymore, And so I had to ask myself, like, what patterns did I begin to notice? What was I doing that was making me not aware of self? Like, what triggers did I have, that was causing me to be fearful or like in doubt of myself? I remember one time in college where I had a breakdown, like a mental breakdown about my hair situation. And I'm sure my friends can remember this. My hair wasn't done, and I was due to get it done, and I had it a certain way. But when I went to sleep and woke up the next day, it was just all over the place. And I was like, it's no way I'm going to class like this, yo. Like, this cannot be happening. So instead of asking somebody to help me or just, putting a hat on and just making sure I got to class, the fact that my hair was a mess, it triggered me. You know what I'm saying? Because I used to have a fear of my hair. And that fear came about because I didn't know my hair. I didn't love my hair like I was supposed to. I didn't take care of it like I was supposed to, because it was always, to me, it felt like a task. Like every Sunday I was like, oh, I gotta get my hair done. And I was just like, why can't I just have my hair like flowing in the wind, no stress, no drama, my edges on fleek, whoop whoop. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, yeah, people may look like that, however, they take care of their hair. There's still a responsibility in place. And I had to understand that, And so I noticed there was a pattern, and I had to overcome that fear, that self-doubt, that regardless of how my hair looked, I'm still gorgeous. I'm still beautiful. And if somebody was checking for me, they had to check for me on and off, right? My edges are on fleek and off. And so I started to journal. I started to write things down a lot, and that became a very powerful tool. Writing down your thoughts can help you identify recurring themes and beliefs that you might be holding, that might be holding you back. Once I started writing in my journal, and I started just expressing myself, I started to notice that I had a talent, which was poetry, you know? And I started to notice that the words I was saying was really in tune with what I was seeing in the natural. And it just helped me express myself and be more at peace. And then another step, guys, is number 2, which is challenging limiting beliefs. Like once you've identified what beliefs are limiting you, the next step is to challenge them. Like really start asking yourself this question, like, is this belief really true? Like, do I really believe I'm not enough? Do I really believe that if my edges are not on fleek, I'm ugly? Do I really believe that? Or is that just the inner me or the enemy trying to tell me that I am somebody that I'm not? And I know God has made me in his image to be beautiful. So why am I tripping? You know? And I had to start challenging my belief system. Like, what evidence did I have to support it? See, often our beliefs are based on just assumptions and not facts. So we start to question our beliefs, and that can dismantle them. That can break off chains and barriers. Like when you tell yourself, okay, self, listen, you say I'm ugly, but guess what? Somebody like me. That's gonna break the barrier of you feeling ugly off of you. If you are overweight and you start telling yourself like, yeah, I may be overweight, but guess what? I'm finna get in this gym. Then what? You're gonna start dismantling that belief that you fat and overweight, right? When you start grooming yourself and you start, pouring into yourself like self-love, you're going to dismantle those thoughts of unworthiness, doubt, etc. And I had to start doing that. I had to start telling myself like, yeah, you grew up in a certain neighborhood, but guess what? This is where you're at now. So let's embrace this current situation. Yeah, you didn't have a lot growing up, but you have something now. So let's just be grateful for what you do have. Yeah, you may not have a lot of money, but you got a little change in your pocket. So let's just spend our money, wisely, or what we do have. And by me doing that, ultimately, I began to break off chains of limiting belief systems that were in my generation, I think, for centuries, maybe ancient centuries ago. And it started to help me unlock, the power to my mental freedom. I also started tasks like I became more mindful and I started to meditate, by me being more mindful, I was aware of what I was doing in the present moment and not dwelling on my past or, so to speak, my future, but just right in that moment. I already had a routine in place. I already had things in line. So by me being more mindful in the moment, I was able to make sure my mind was in a safe space mentally. When it came to meditation, those practices really helped me stay present and grounded, rather than getting lost in the worries about the futures, or regrets about my past. They helped me create a mental space where I was just able to observe my thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them. So I started to meditate daily, even if it was just 30 minutes to an hour. I just started to meditate. And I would play certain things in the background, like a little small white noise, a little ocean sound, a little nature here and there, piano, just to kind of calm me down. Because I noticed that my thoughts were just so loud. Like, they were loud, and I didn't like it. It's like I couldn't be just quiet. Like if it was quiet, I would be like, oh no, like it's too quiet in here, turn something on. And that was a problem. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, why can't it just be quiet sometimes? Why can't I just be in here and it be quiet? So I had to really work on it. And I had to challenge myself to get into that mental space, the safe zone, really. where I can just observe my thoughts and my feelings and not get caught up in them. And so in return, that emotional healing became crucial as a part of unlocking my mental freedom. Like, I started to involve therapy into my situation. You know, I have a spiritual therapist who I speak with daily, and, you know, ultimately that person helps me, you know, stay grounded in my emotions. You know, when it comes to energy work, you know, I pick and choose what I give energy to. If it's a negative situation, I don't have time for it. You know, if it's somebody trying to like tear me down or get me off track, I walk away from it. I don't care if you're in mid-conversation, I'm going to walk away, and you're going to look crazy because I don't have time. I don't. Like, mental freedom right now is so peaceful, right? So I'm not giving my energy away to negativity, to gossip, to slander, none of that. And by me simply allowing myself to feel, you know, and process my emotions, I'm able to emotionally heal. Because you got to remember, healing it's not about forgetting the past, right? It's about releasing its hold on you so you can move forward. So my papa, I like to say, throw it in the sea of forgetfulness, right? And that's important. You have to. Doesn't mean you're not going to remember it, but it's not going to be at the forecenter of your thought process. You know what I mean? That's not going to be the first thing you wake up and thinking about. So you release its hold over you, and you can move forward. It's like a chain. Like, you ever try to like go forward in life and you just turn around backwards? Like, if you get into a car and you turn around backwards and try to drive that car, you're going to get into an accident. And that's how a lot of us, believe it or not, are living life. It's like we're trying to go forward, but we're looking in the rearview mirror constantly. You're not even looking at what's ahead of us or what's currently in front of us. And that's not healing. That's actually, you know, trauma. So, you know, just remember it's a process, and you have to do it. So it might involve forms of therapy. You know, you might have to do some type of emotional energy work where you transform that energy into something positive. But you got to allow yourself to feel and process your emotions. Don't try to skip over it, because it's going to catch you in the long run. If you're angry about something, be mature and voice your opinion about your anger in a respectful way, and then move on from it. And then figure out what you could learn by the situation. Don't let it build up and just build up and build up and build up. If you feel some type of way about something, voice your opinion about it, right? Don't just let it sit with you, and then you be like, well, I could have said this, or I should have said that, and you don't end up saying it. And then it just sitting there. And then, ladies, you know, we can do it. When your man come home, you be sitting there like, okay, babe, let me tell you blah, blah, blah. He be like, whoa, wait a minute. Hold up, baby, I just got home. Let me rest a little bit. And then you feel some type of way because you like, my man don't even care. He don't even care how I feel. And it's like, no, shorty, like, that man's just tired. He worked all day. That's not the first thing he want to hear when he get home, because he too could be dealing with emotional things. You know what I mean? He too could have had a bad day at work. So y'all have to set that time aside where y'all have that time in your relationship or your situation where you give yourself, I would say, at least an hour and a half to just talk about your emotions and get it all off the table, judgment free. Get that safe zone space inside of your relationship and just heal each other and pour into each other and incorporate God into the process. And he's going to help y'all, you know, overcome that, because y'all came together and y'all let it out, and you came into an agreement that from now on, from that conversation forward, you're going to release that. All right. So number 5, you want to cultivate self-compassion. And I wrote this down. Like, when it comes to self-compassion, that's essential. You got to have compassion for yourself. It's super hard. Well, it's super easy to be hard on yourself when you're trying to change certain patterns, right? But to beat yourself up about it, you will only reinforce these patterns. So, for example, if, let's say, you've been overweight for a long time and you just neglected your body, well, when you develop self-compassion, you have a little bit more grace about your situation. So you're not constantly beating yourself up like, man, I'm just fat, oh my God. No, like, you can be like, all right, self, listen, you got a little weight on you. So let's take our time, figure out what exercises work for us so we can get ourselves together. And you're showing yourself compassion. You're being kind to yourself, right? For real. And you're not reinforcing that trauma, because you could have gained that weight from emotional trauma. Like, a lot of people don't realize they eat a lot when they're emotional. And then that's how they develop unhealthy weight gain, and just fat on the body. But you gotta have compassion for yourself, So instead, just practice kindness. Kindness is gentle. It's loving. It's letting yourself know that you care, and just understand that you're working towards a certain goal, and it's going to take time. So celebrate your small progress. Celebrate every victory. I don't care if you do 100 push-ups one day and then you do 200 the next day and 3. Be amazed at that progress, because you went from 100 to 200 to 3. So you're still growing, So what, your homeboy can do 1,000 push-ups? So what, your homegirl can do 20 crunches and you can only do 1? Okay, tomorrow you might be able to do 2, but at least you are advancing. And so just be more compassionate when it comes to yourself and helping to break those long-standing patterns, right? Don't beat yourself up, okay? And then 6, you want to release the need for external validation. That don't mean you stop caring about other people and what they think, but you're going to stop letting their opinions dictate your self-worth. If somebody come out of their mouth and say, you lazy, bro, like, all you do is blah, blah, blah. Okay, you take into consideration, like, what is it about me that makes you think I'm lazy? Is it because I don't operate how you operate? You gotta ask them person the question. You can't just let them call you something and then let that title stick with you, because that's their opinion. So don't let their opinions dictate your self-worth. Like, practice affirming your own value and making decisions based on what's true for you. If you like to drink, okay, then that's what you like to do. You feel me? Just be mindful that too much drinking can lead to, health problems. Okay? If you like to eat, great. Just be mindful that certain foods can lead to certain health problems. So you gotta have a balance of healthy food options into your diet. Incorporate that, right? See, when you practice affirming your own value, nobody can tell you that you're not something that you know you are. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you know you're beautiful, ain't no man can come by and tell you that you're not, because you believe that. You've made that a decision based on what you know is true to be yourself. And you don't care if you earn their approval or not. So you'll stop seeking attention in the wrong places. You'll stop attracting the wrong type of guy. All of that. And you'll start attracting people who are for you and not the people who are against you and just looking to have just something to gain from you based on how you look as a female or a male, or in general. And so I like to go over these one more time, that these are some actual steps you can take to help you along the way when it comes to the journey of being mentally free. So again, that's self-awareness. Challenge your limiting beliefs. Be more mindful and meditate. Conquer emotional healing. Cultivate self-compassion into your life more, and then release the need for external validation. Release that. And so, guys, I want you to, if you don't mind, like, if you have time, you can inbox me, you can email me, You can always reach me on social media. Like if you have a real life example of how you've unlocked the power of mental freedom by using these steps, right? You can be a public figure, whether you're a historical figure or, you know, in general, just any type of person, a coach, a doctor, a regular citizen person, army person, I don't know. But if you have a story, I'd love to hear from you, and just, you know, sharing with us how you overcame, you know, fears in life, or just, you know, things that cause you to be mentally stuck and confined, but you found a way out, right? These stories can show us that mental freedom is possible for anyone, regardless of their circumstances. And so it's not about having a perfect life, but, you know, just about cultivating the inner resources needed to navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience. You know what I mean? You know, God is a free will God. You know, He will never put more on us than we can bear. And He will never leave us nor forsake us. So you're going to have ups and downs, tests and trials, basically. But they will help you get stronger, and they will challenge you and help you grow. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. But what you'll get out of it is that grace and that resilience and that determination and that endurance. And you'll develop more patience, right? You'll have more passion for life. You'll have more love about certain things. You'll be able to approach certain situations with a lot more maturity. You know what I mean? You have self-control, etc. Long suffering. Those are things that can help you be great in life. It can help you have more peace. And so in this next segment, I want to discuss a topic about how to, you know, have mental freedom through visualization, right? So this is an interactive exercise that I'm going to focus on with you guys. All right, guys, so this is an interactive exercise. It's called a mental freedom visualization. Now, I want to guide you through a powerful visualization exercise that can help you tap into your mental freedom. So if you're in a place where it's safe to do so, let's get into the safe zone. And I want you to go ahead and close your eyes. Okay? And as you're closing your eyes, I want you to take a few deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Feel your body relax with each exhale. So take a couple of deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now, imagine yourself as you keep your eyes closed in a situation that typically triggers fear or anxiety for you. If you can, I want you to see the scene clearly in your mind, and I want you to notice how your body reacts. If there's any tension, discomfort, or uneasiness, let's tackle that, okay? Now, imagine a wave of calmness washing over you, soothing your body and your mind. And as this wave passes through you, it clears away the fear of anxiety, and it leaves you feeling cleansed, clean, centered, and strong. Again, you're going to imagine a wave of just calmness washing over you, soothing your body and your mind, and letting this fear of anxiety leave you completely, just washing away. Visualize yourself handling the situation with complete confidence and ease. And remember, you're in control of your thoughts and emotions. You speak and act from a place of power inside. And notice how it feels to be free from fear, free from doubt, free from the need of approval. Stay in this feeling for a few moments, if you will, and really soak it in. When you're ready, I want you to slowly bring your awareness back to the present moment and open your eyes. This is the power of mental freedom. It's always within you. You just have to tap into it. And if you need moments like that where you're just visualizing yourself in control of your thoughts and emotions, you have the power to do that. The more you practice connecting with this inner power, the more natural it will become. And so I do this practically every day, especially if there's a lot of things going on, a lot of situations. I have moments where I really sit down and I visualize myself overcoming whatever emotion that's present, that's bringing me negativity, harm, or just uneasiness. Okay? So in conclusion, guys, unlocking the power of mental freedom is a journey, not a destination. It really requires ongoing practice. You're going to have moments of self-reflection and a commitment to personal growth. That's a requirement. But the rewards are immense. They're immense. The rewards are immense. It's amazing to look back at your progress and see that you've cultivated a life where you're truly in control of your own experience, regardless of external circumstances, right? That's true faith. When you unlock the power of mental freedom, that's faith. Because I can't see up ahead. But guess what? I'm going to believe that God got me. That's faith. I'm going to believe that he hear and know my situation because he know me and I know him. Right? So I want to thank y'all for joining me on this episode of The Safe Zone. I hope you found today's discussion insightful and empowering. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with somebody who might benefit from it. And leave a review. That could help others find our show. It could help them unlock their mental freedom. And ultimately, we can help each other, right? Again, this is not a destiny. It's a journey. So it's going to take some time. It's going to require ongoing practice and a commitment. Right? But ultimately, you're going to grow from this. So just remember, the power of mental freedom is within you. You just have to unlock it. Until next time, take care of your mind. Take care of your soul. Keep pouring into your spirit. And take care of your body. And stay free. And if you feel like you're not in a space of freedom, get into that safe zone. And remember the practices that we discussed today. You can always go back to the episode and replay it. This was The Safe Zone. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'll see you next time.